Good morning. Good morning. I would like to start with the story from 3 years ago. So 3 years ago, Wooga was a much smaller company than it is now. Back then, we were about 80 employees. That's about a third of what we are now. We were just a fraction of the revenue we have now, and we were not profitable like we are now. And back then, we already had 2 hits on Facebook, games that over the next few years became quite successful, and each of them generated over $10 million in revenue, significantly above that. But we were also working on new projects. And one of these new projects we were working on was a game called Dream Cruise. And this game, Dream Cruise, there was something new about it for us, because this was the first project ever we stopped during development. We had never done that before. All other projects we had been working on until that point in time, in the first 2 years of the company, basically from idea to launch, we went all of the way. And this is a game that halfway during development, we stopped. And we made lots of mistakes there. It wasn't really so much about the stopping. That was right. This game would not have become a hit. So stopping it was the right decision. However, the way we stopped it, that was definitely not good. And that's what I want to talk about today, what we've learned from that. So what did we do wrong 3 years ago? First of all, I made the decision. I was the one stopping this project. The team was not really involved. I told the team that we would stop the project. And that was very difficult for them and created lots of frustration because I was the person telling them. Even though probably they would have stopped themselves, I think just a couple of weeks later they would have realized themselves, but I made the decision. Then secondly, we did not share any learnings. The team knew why this game would not have become a hit, why it wasn't good enough, but we didn't share it with anybody else, so the rest of the organization could not learn from it. And the third thing really was, we created lots of job insecurity for the team. We stopped the project, but we did not have a good plan what would happen thereafter. It was maybe 10 people or so. Some of these 10 people we put into a new project right away, but some others, it was a little bit unclear what project would they work on next. They sometimes didn't have anything to do for weeks and were a bit bored and didn't have a task really, and that really felt very bad. And as a result of that, stopping became a taboo. Stopping a project became a taboo at Wooga. And that is a big problem. Stopping at your company, in my view, needs to be normal. And if it's a taboo, this is a big problem. And I think it makes sense to take a step back to talk about why that is such a big problem. There are about 1,000 new mobile games launching every week. 1,000 new games launch on the App Store, 1,000 new games launch on Google Play every week. And there are about 100,000 games in total. And if you look at the revenue distribution, we think it looks something like this. So that chart here is pretty interesting because it shows there on the vertical, it shows revenue per day, and on the horizontal, it shows the chart position. And there are about 100,000 games in the App Store, but only really the top titles there reap in most revenue. Obviously, the top 3 or so make maybe $1 million a day or more, but all the way roughly to the top 50, you have some really, really healthy revenues of tens of thousands of dollars per day or more. However, with 100,000 games in the App Store, if you're in the top 1%, right, you're place 1,000. So if you're in the top 1% of the App Store, you are place 1,000, which is somewhere there at the end of the room. That's nothing. So if you're in the top 1% of the App Store, you make tiny revenues. You can definitely not finance a company from that. However, if you have just one game in the top 50, a company with 100 employees or maybe 200 employees, you can finance the whole company just from one game in the top 50. And therefore, good is not good enough. If you have a game that is just good, that will make it to the top 1% of the App Store, you should stop it. You really need to create games that are great. Only if you create games that are great and outstanding, you have a chance to get somewhere to the top of the store, and because of that, finance that team, but also all other teams that you have been working on. So you need to make stopping normal. That is really essential. And definitely 3 years ago at Wooga, stopping was not normal. And this changed about 18 months ago. Because about 18 months ago, that was in the spring of 2013, we had 5 launches, 5 game launches that were happening at roughly the same time. Back then, we were still working on Facebook and mobile in parallel. So some of these were Facebook games, some of these were mobile games. And out of those 5 launches that we had just in a very short time frame, 4 of them flopped. 4 of these 5 launches flopped. The only one that was successful was a hidden object, an adventure game called Pearl's Peril with a very female audience. That was a big hit, but all of the other 4 flopped. And actually, if we looked at it, we should have stopped many of them earlier. For some of these games, we kind of knew a year before launch that this would not be a hit. But as I just said, stopping was a taboo. So even if we had a game that wasn't so great, we would not stop it. Everybody was afraid, because of the 3 reasons I mentioned at the beginning. Everybody was afraid to stop it. And we said, well, we need to change our approach. We can't continue like this. We need to change our approach. Instead of going from all the way from start to launch, we will change that. Instead, we will question ourselves regularly. Every project, every few months, we will look at it and ask ourselves, should we continue or should we stop? So how does that work? How does the process now work? So we have hundreds of ideas. Every game company, every good game company has hundreds of ideas. But in the past, we were going from hundreds of ideas, selecting just a few, and then taking those few all the way to launch. Instead now, we do about 40 prototypes every year. So a prototype that is maybe around 3 people working on a project for a couple of months, making it playable so lots of other people from the company can enjoy it. And then deciding, do we continue with this or not? And at that stage, those are fully playable games. We stop 3/4 of them. And only 10 more go to production every year. So that's really a strong filter already there. And then about 7 of them soft launch. So 7 of these games go to soft launch per year, let's say in Canada or Australia. And then the goal is that we only launch 3, not more, maybe just 2, and then have 2 hits per year. That's the goal. 2 hits per year out of these hundreds of ideas and 40 prototypes. And this process we now call the hit filter. And to make this work, I think making this work once, like 1 year, that is not a big issue. You can make this one time, 1 year long. But after that, everybody of your employees will be frustrated because almost everybody will have worked on a project that was stopped. Everybody will leave your company or just be in frustration. So the key thing for us has been how to solve these 3 things I mentioned at the beginning. How to make the decision, how to share the learnings, and how to ensure the transition of team members from one game to the other. If we would get that right, then we would also get acceptance for this approach. And if we get it wrong, everybody would be demotivated and frustrated. And that is something that I would like to show you now. So I would like to show you one example of a game we stopped about a year ago during development and how we have dealt with it so much differently than with Dream Cruise 3 years ago. So let me show you a video. I hope that works. Let's see if that works now. There's a quick video that should be running. Let's see. Okay, yeah, it works. So you see you have the phone. Your plane, your fighter jet, follows your thumb. So if you move the thumb to the side, that is visible then on the screen. And this game was called Arcade Flight. And everybody we put it into the hands, they were amazed because of this direct control. You move your thumb directly controls the action. And they were really, really, really positive about this title. And they said, wow, this is addicting. Let me play another round. Let me play another round. However, this game, which was an endless vertical shooter with arenas, boss fights, and upgrades, that is a game that we stopped during development. So why did we stop it? Let's see if the next slide comes up. Yeah, so why did we stop it? We stopped it because of limited hit potential. That is really the key reason why we stopped it. Now, what about the team? These are four, actually the actual team was 6 people, but these are 4 of the team members. How do you keep them motivated? What do you do? Well, like I said, making the decision, that is key. I did not make the decision to stop. So when we look at these games every couple of months, we really get all kinds of information that we can get. The one is, well, we let people in the company play. We invite external user testers. We do market research. We do all kinds of sources of feedback. But in the end, to make the decision, we get everybody into a room. And I'm also always present in these meetings. And everybody very clearly voices their opinion. However, in the end, the last decision is to the product lead. So the lead of the team has the last word. Everybody has their word. Everybody has their opinion. But in the end, this is not a committee. We don't believe in like majority decisions or anything like that. It's really about the product lead needs to make the decision. And that really ensures that the team has really buy-in. That is not me overruling. The second is about sharing the learnings. So when we stop a project, the team takes a step back and usually spends a week or so writing down everything that has worked and that has not worked. And they then share that in what we call a brown bag. So a brown bag talk, about half an hour at the office. It's voluntarily for people to attend, but usually 2/3 of the company comes. So it's maybe 150 employees come in, we record it on video, so it can be used later. And that is a very well thought out presentations with all of the learnings. And that allows us to take learnings from one game to the next game in a very good manner. But it's not just about making future games more successful. This is also a very important factor for the motivation of the team. Because in the past, that project was stopped, and then everything basically went to the trash, right? Nobody cared about it anymore. But now, all of the learnings they had in their 6 months or 12 months on working on this is basically put together and shared with everybody else. So their project had a meaning. It had something good. There was a positive outcome, very important for the motivation of the team. And the third is about ensuring transitions. So when you, let's say you have a team of 10 people, for us usually, for 6 or 7 of them, we have a new project right away. But there may be a situation where for some of these team members, there's a transition period. Maybe that particular artist with that particular skill, we only need in a new project in 2 or 3 months. Or that engineer with that particular skill, we only need in 2 months. Or that product manager, we only need in 2 months. And then what we do, we have something we call lab time, where these people, they don't sit idle, they work on a project in the lab that has a meaning, that is meaningful, but also is beneficial for Wooga. So the artist may learn about 3D if she or he hasn't worked on 3D yet. The engineer may turn a piece of code into a library that can be reused for a future game, and the product manager may do some market research. And that helps a lot. So those are the really key 3 things that we do so differently today than we did them 3 years ago. About the team, and in the end, the product lead having the decision. About sharing the learnings internally, and about ensuring the transition from one project to the other with a plan and then also lab time for those who are not directly needed. And because of that, stopping projects is now normal. We stop most of our projects actually, just a fraction of them launches. But these stop projects are the groundwork for critical hits, and they allow us to be successful. And if you want to know more about this process, we have put a description on our website. If you go to wooga.com/hitfilter, you see a description of the process and the culture. And we also list the number of projects that we have stopped in the past. So you see a little bit of examples of projects we have stopped and not moved forward. So with that now, we're over 250 employees now. We had 5 hits in the last 4 years. And we're really focused on building a culture and a process that allows us to repeatedly create hits. Thank you. Yeah. So I just heard we finished a little bit early, and there would be time for 1 or 2 questions. Does anybody have a questions? Below here is the microphone. Raise your arm. Do you have a question? Otherwise, we move to the next presentation.
Help us out here.
You mentioned a lot about doing lots of prototyping with large teams. What advice would you give to someone with a smaller team if they can't prototype 40 games a year, for instance, which you can narrow down to 10? What advice would you give to someone that could, say, prototype maybe 5 or 10 games? Is it the same pyramid?
Sorry, I didn't fully get the question because of the audio. Sorry. Because if you have a smaller team?
Yeah, smaller teams. You were specifically saying your team has the capacity to maybe prototype 40 games a year. What would you say to somebody that has a much smaller team that couldn't prototype that many games? Is it the same process?
I think the approach is the same. I think the essence really, so I hope everybody could get the question. I think the essence really is making stopping normal. Even if you're a small company, you work on your one game, right? You're just like 5 people, you work on your one game. Even then, I believe it's essential that you always ask yourself, should we really continue working on this? Or should we maybe stop this halfway during development and start with a new project right away? And the key message really is, this market is so hyper-competitive. There's an oversupply of games. If you want to be successful, you really have to stand out. You have to create something really special. And therefore, if you don't have a game that really has hit potential, if you have a game that is only good, stop it, even if you are just working on one game. Thank you.